Hey, Paul here for Retro Gaming Arts, and today's video is I'm going to be showing you exactly how I install Mega Amps into the SEGA Genesis, and it's going to be very heavily focused on the wire management that I do for the installs. And if you want to learn more about what a Mega Amp is, it's an audio amplifier for the SEGA Genesis. I did a video comparing and showing what the Mega Amp does. I'll link that video in the description. If you want to buy a Mega Amp and install it yourself, they're available on the website retrogamingarts.com, and I'll put a link to that in the description. If you want me to mod your SEGA Genesis, reach out to me on social media or email me, and then I can mod your SEGA Genesis as well. Like I said, this is going to be very heavily focused on the install job and the wire management. So for every single Mega Amp install, it requires you to remove certain components, and all those diagrams of what to remove for what Genesis revision is all on my website. Some of them also require a small modification for the SEGA CD to work with the Mega Amp, just adding some resistors. And then also each Mega Amp, since they work with all revisions of the Genesis, they have little jumpers on them that you'll need to jump based upon your revision, and your revision will be on your motherboard, but the Mega Amp works with every single one. And when soldering, always wear a mask. So this is where the chip's going to be, right here where it is, and then we want to cut all of our wires longer than where they're going to go, but not too much longer, and that's about how long I cut the wires. And you only strip one side because we're tinning one side only. We're going to cut and strip the other side later. It's very important that you only do this to one side. So now that they're all tinned, you see how some wires are going up, left, and right. That's based upon your design of where you want the wire routing to go. And like I said, it's going to be very heavily focused on the wire routing. So since these are through hole, we're just going to solder. We're going to remove the solder and just solder them straight through the hole of where the capacitors were. And we're going to solder each one, and what we're going to do is we're going to alternate the colors. We're going to go red, black, red, black, red, black. You can do whatever you want. You can do half and half, you could do a different color. It's up to you. Use your creativity to make it look however you want. And that's what's awesome about this, is creative freedom with how it looks. Even though it's all about making your Genesis sound better, but whatever. I like it to look good as well. So like I said, we're alternating the colors, and then what we're also doing is we're making sure that when we solder each one, it's going to be very easy for it to go into the direction that we want it to go in. So these ones, which are the surface mount resistors that we had to remove, you gotta be careful so it's only connected to the one side. So we're tinning those, and it's a short little wire. So we're tinning those, and then we're soldering right to the point. And see how those ones are actually going away from where the chip's going to go? That's because those ones are going to loop. They're going to loop back towards the chip. Just like here's all the angles of where they're routed. Because now that all the wires are soldered to the board, you see how they're kind of all, the ones up to the right are going down, the ones at the bottom right are going to the left, and the ones at the top left are going to the right. And now we're going to kind of feed them all together and curl them all into place. And as we're curling them all into place, sometimes we got to straighten them out because they're a little messy, so we'll just use the tweezers. And then it's all about getting them flat, flush, and even. So you kind of just, finagle and wiggle it with your fingers and just try to get them all in line. And I tend to rub my thumb over all of them, and it kind of presses them down and puts them in a line together, and then I use the tweezers to tweak their position. But it's a lot of smoothing them out, using the tweezers to make sure that your color pattern is correct, and making sure that the wires are in the correct orientation that you want them to be in. And then right here is kind of the magic moment where they all start to come together flat. And I got them held down, and then certain colors to make sure that my color pattern goes correct, you use the tweezers, and then you move those into the different locations. Like I had two reds before, now it's black, red, and I got two reds, so I'm going to have to move the two towards the top left over, and then that way we'll get red, black all the way through. But we're almost there. But you see how all the wires are kind of flat? That's your first goal, is to get them flat and to get them all in order, and then that's where you work on the color. And if you ever like accidentally make a mistake with which wires you soldered and there's no way that you can get them into the pattern, don't be shy to be like, okay, I need to unsolder this wire and then change the color for whatever your pattern is that you want to do. And I actually have to do that a lot of the times, where I just alternate them when I solder them, and then when I go and do this part, I find out that there's no way that I can alternate them the way I wanted to, so then I have to swap a wire color, which is no big deal. But for now, I kind of know which ones are going to be which color, so I can just, from the start, solder them all together. So like that magic moment is kind of also right here, where now they're all flat. So now that we have them all flat and we have them all alternating colors, we're going to hold it down. And we're going to hold it down, and we're just going to keep it there, because that's what we want. That's what we've been going for, and we're going to try to get them all flat. Flat, and then this is where you pull each wire and get them to the correct length, because we're almost at like the last point where this is what it's going to be like. So we're just doing our final little tweaks with the tweezers, moving that one in a little bit, and then we're going to move these ones out a little bit, but that was actually too much, so we're going to then move it back in a little bit. And then this is the moment when you have them all flat and all in the correct color. That's where you get to place each wire for its final home, for its final destination, and use the tweezers to get them all perfect and get them all in place. And you just keep doing this part. Now that you have them all flat and held down with one hand, you do all the loops and get all those into the perfect order, and right there, boom, that's just about it, and we have it. So now once you have it here, well, we didn't, we had to move that one red wire, but it's okay, we're there. So now that you have it here and you have it all flat the exact way that you want it, this is where super glue comes in, and you're going to see in a second how I super glue these. And this is very, very important. So I have super glue that has a little brush. I've heard clear nail polish remover works well as well. Watch how much super glue I use. It's a very, very, very minimal amount, and that's the most important part. You do not want to use too much super glue, because you do not want to get the super glue touching the board. You do not want that at all. It's very bad. Don't do that. So, you see exactly how much super glue I used? The purpose of that is just to hold the wires together, to essentially turn them into a ribbon cable, so to speak. And now what we're doing is we're holding them in place so that the edge wires can get glued together. So as you see right here, when I said it's very important they don't get glued to the board, as you see, they're all glued together, but they're not glued to the board. You can still lift them up. It's very important that you don't get them on the board. I don't know how many times I just said that. It's important. You don't want to use too much glue. Use as little as humanly possible. Just a strip across, just to get them to stay in place. Alright, so now that we have our wires in place, they're all soldered to the correct points where, like I said, all the diagrams are on the website if you were doing this. This same method works with, I do this exact same method for all installs. If you saw how I mod my PS1 video, it's the same thing, except that it doesn't look as pretty because of the way the mod is. You can't make it look like this, or you can, but it's different. But I do the same method where I solder them to the board, and then I cut, strip, and tin them to the location on the chip. And that's exactly what we're doing now. So this is why you want to leave enough extra room on all your wires, because based upon your route, you don't know exactly how long you need each one to be. So just make them all a little longer. It's okay. And now right here, what I'm doing is I'm moving them all into the place, and I'm cutting them and then stripping them in the exact length that I want. That's why in the beginning I said you only tin one side, because now we're cut, stripping, and tinning the second side. Now, this may be like a lot, but honestly, I think anybody can do this, and that's why I'm making this video, because anybody who solders or installs and doesn't make their installs look like this, you can. Like, it's not that hard. I believe in you. You can do it. Like, I know you can. And I just want to share like all these little tips and tricks that I've learned to do this so other people can do this. Even though a lot of other people can do this. But you know what I mean. So like I said, it's cut, stripping, and tinning each wire. Now the biggest mistakes I made when I first started doing this was accidentally cutting the wire when you should be stripping it. So that's something you gotta be careful about. And if you're worried about doing that, then just cut them a little longer. Just leave it's called a service loop, where technically when you're soldering a wire, you should never cut it to the exact length. You should always leave a little bit of a service loop, so you can, if you make a mistake, you can go back and cut the wire and resolder it and still have some length. But with these, we don't leave service loops because we want it to look good. But it's something you can do. You can make them a little extra longer, and then like as you practice, you can cut them to the exact length that you want. And then because they're short and we don't have much room to play with, that's why we tin them in the moment, and then we solder them and we use the tweezers to connect them to the board. And then for this last one, the orientation of where the wires go on the board, on the Mega Amp, doesn't match up to our wire pattern. So that's where we can get creative, where how we route them to go to the same one. And the way I'm knowing which wire goes to what is I'm looking at the install diagram on my website, and then I'm seeing which point, and then I'm just tracing it and then finding the wire of which point goes where, and then just moving it to wherever it gets soldered to. And that's why you see that it's not all like a perfect each one. That's why they like, some of them cross, but that's where you get creative when they cross, is by going some under, some over, and making it look how you want. It's so much fun to do this. It's a lot of fun, and I thoroughly enjoy doing this because I don't know. It's just awesome. So some of them, my little strippers are actually getting kind of dull, and I have them so you can strip any size wire. They don't necessarily work with Kynar. With Kynar wire, I actually, the same exact method, but I use fingernail clippers to strip the wires in the moment, because you can cut them with the fingernail clippers and then you can strip them, and it works very well. So this exact method that I'm using, it works on, this is exactly how I do my PS2s. If you've seen me on social media, you'll see some of my PS2 installs. I haven't done a video about those yet, but I will. And then the last one that we have almost is the last two wires is just your power wire and your ground, which is the same method as before, but it's just at two little points. So this was the last one, and then we just have the power and the ground, which I'm just going to speed through because it's just two little wires. It's the exact same method I've been talking about. If you guys have any questions about anything like this, feel free to ask me in the comments, and I hope you enjoyed this, and let me know if you want to see one for the PS2. I'll make the PS2 one. I'll do the PS2 one, but just let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any questions about soldering or anything like that, don't hold back. Hit me up, let me know, and I'll answer any of those questions. So thank you guys all very much for watching. Thank you for checking out the channel, watching all the other videos that I have, and checking out the Mega Amp, the website, all that kind of stuff, all the support. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.